The first overrated motorcycle we're talking about today is the Kawasaki Z900. I'm not sure which is worse, the Z900 itself or the Z900 riders who sing its praises at any given opportunity. It's almost like Kawasaki's running two different programs over in Japan. On one side, they make novel, interesting bikes like the H2 and the ZX4RR, and on the other, they produce the Ninja 650 and the Versys. And despite what Z900 simps may proselytize, the Z900 definitely falls in the latter camp. It uses a traditional inline 4-cylinder engine, but it's not a leader bike. I mean, it's not even really a sport bike. It's a naked bike that doesn't come with the rowdy panache that you find in the larger half of the middleweight category. This engine feels more at home in the RS trim, as the retro design may fool you into thinking you're riding a classic UJM, where the pretty detuned 4-cylinder engine feels more at home. Because frankly, this engine living inside the sharp, aggro, angular Z900 creates a little bit of a disconnect. And since we're on the subject, the Z900 has got to be one of the most unattractive motorcycles on the market today. It has a design that kind of reminds me of a wadded up candy bar wrapper. The Z900 in many ways feels like an afterthought in Kawasaki's lineup, just a somewhat uninspired addition that allows them to have an option in the upper end of the middleweight category while bringing nothing particularly novel or exciting to the table. They pretty much maxed out all their stats with the ZH2, which is objectively a freaking awesome motorcycle. But the Z900's pretty under-equipped from the factory with lackluster suspension, notoriously terrible OEM rubber, and rudimentary tech, not to mention, thanks in part to its use of a 4-cylinder engine versus a triple or a twin, it weighs a whopping 470 pounds. That's 45 pounds heavier than an MT-09 and nearly 50 pounds heavier than a Duke 990. Coming in at just around $10,000, the Z900 is one of the cheaper bikes in this category, but it's not without sacrifice. It's ugly, uninteresting, and lacking in many of the features and characteristics you'd expect from a naked bike in 2024. Okay, look, by far one of the most overrated bikes in history is the BMW S1000RR. It's consistently regarded as an elite member of the leader bike class and often considered to be the dream bike for fast boys and trust fund street squids. But the glaring issue with the S1K is that it's just too refined. It's been highly polished and engineered that it lacks the character and attitude you'd expect from a world-class leader bike. It's like they engineered it with such precision that they cooked all the flavor out of it. It's a really fast bike, but it's also alarmingly easy to ride. And despite it costing nearly $25,000 after farkles and add-ons, it could still be smoked by any last-gen leader bike in the hands of a right rider. Essentially, any motorcycle from BMW is a bit overrated. People want to buy into the allure of a luxury European brand when really there are just better, cheaper, and more fun motorcycles made by practically every other company. Tell me who buys an F900? Go ahead. Who the hell owns that bike? Nobody. It's also a pretty common sentiment that BMW motorcycles work great until they don't. They're very much motorcycles that need to maintain an intimate relationship with the dealer, whether it be for warranty work or routine service or just to unlock the whole rev range after the break-in period. And like I said, they're nice bikes by most standards, but they don't have that soul or charisma or character that many people want from a motorcycle. And because it's a bike that has been pretty routinely changed and updated, and not just made in numbers anywhere close to the Japanese competition, many owners end up having problems right from the factory. Past gens had issues with brakes, some people have reported leaking fork seals, or at worst, there have been reports of transmission and engine issues that require software updates or other dealership black magic to remedy. Didn't we just see here on YouTube that a bunch of M1000RRs kept blowing up? Overall, by most metrics, the S1000RR is a pretty good bike, but its sterility, quirks, price point, and how routinely it is hyped up by people who have never even ridden one make it supremely overrated. Plus, they've never won World Superbike, so how good can it really be? Although, yes, it seems inevitable that Toprak will beat that this year, but it's freaking Toprak. Come on, he could make a scooter be World Superbike champion. And when we think of Honda, we think of the sort of milquetoast, pedestrian, reliable workhorse machines that they've built their legacy upon. Sure, they make a 215 horsepower Fireblade, but that is definitely a bit of an anomaly when you look at the big picture. So if Hondas are notoriously uninspired, that begs the question, what business do they have throwing their hat into the hyper-naked arena? Well, they did just that with the CB1000R. With the hyper-naked segment being so competitive with bikes like the MT-10, Super Duke, Speed Triple, Tuono V4 amongst others, the CB1000R is kinda lackluster. It sort of feels like the Z900 in this way. Its 998cc displacement has almost done this bike a disservice, as it inches the CB into hyper-naked category without having the power, panache, or technology you would expect from other bikes in this category. The CB1000R uses a highly detuned CBR1000R engine designed for a more street-friendly power. But when other hyper-naked bikes are pushing close to 175 horsepower or higher from engines with way more character and rowdy power delivery, a massively detuned inline-4 that makes 143 just doesn't stack up. And many Honda fans who own this bike are quick to say, well, it's really smooth and it handles really well, and if you don't expect it to be a hyper-naked bike, it's great. Well, if it's not trying to be a hyper-naked bike, then what is it? Just sort of a detuned, more docile, street-going naked bike? Well, if that's what you're interested in, there are motorcycles better catered to do that. But if you're into buying a 1000cc and up naked bike, you usually want those king power numbers, an exciting, playful engine, and usually something a little bit more up-spec, like an IMU and a sporty frame. The CB1000R is pretty heavy as well, coming in at 470 pounds. Taking this all into consideration, the CB1000R is kind of a strange bike that misses the mark no matter what category you put it in. I rode and reviewed one and I thought it was good, but a bit strange. Coming in at $13,000, it doesn't put you that far behind an MT-10, which provides a whole heck of a lot more motorcycle. It's true there are a lot of overrated motorcycles out there. There are also underrated bikes, and even perfectly rated bikes. The MT-07, perfectly rated. But no matter what category your bike falls into or how much you overpaid for it, they all have one thing in common, and that is tires. Tires are important, the only thing keeping your squid missile beneath you in contact with the ground, so I always stress the importance of high quality rubber, whether in the sheets or out there on the streets. But spooning on some premium Michelins is just the first step. You have to maintain your tires by ensuring they're properly inflated and have appropriate tread depth, and motorcyclists should be checking their tire pressure every week at minimum, especially when the weather changes. And the easiest way to check your tires and inflate them to the proper PSI is with the Fantic X9 Pro tire inflator. I've been using the X9 for a few months now, and honestly, it's a really handy little gadget. Its small form factor and long battery life have earned it a permanent place in my tail bag. The X9 inflator automatically stops when it hits the set PSI, so all you gotta do is screw it onto the valve, set the pressure, and you're good to go. With the Fantic X9, I don't have to worry about lugging around a clunky inflator or making unnecessary gas station stops, and if you're like me and you understand the importance of tire health, grab a Fantic for yourself. Whether you ride a motorcycle or drive a car, the size, performance, and convenience of the unit really is unmatched. To grab a unit for yourself, click on the link in the description and use the code YAMMYX9 to get the Fantic X9 Pro for only $39. Again, that's YAMMYX9 to get the X9 Pro for just $39. Thanks for the support, Fantic. Now let's get back to the video. Oh, Harley-Davidson, whatever will we do with you? Your own fans don't even want to ride your bikes anymore. People are shooting up Harley-Davidsons because they're too awake. But maybe the veil is finally lifted and even the most loyal HD stans are realizing how overrated their bikes are. We could really classify any number of motorcycles from Harley-Davidson as being overrated, but today we're going to specifically talk about the modern era of Harleys that use the Milwaukee 8 engine platform. This includes everything from the Street Bob, Lowrider, Street Glide, Road Glide, and all the other glides they got. Are they selling motorcycles or razors? Am I right? These are considered to be the most powerful and advanced engines put out to date, but they're still lumpy, air-cooled, and necessitate thousands in modifications before they run as they should. And it seems like every year they increase the displacement to a more absurd degree. They were 103 cubic inches, then 107, now 117, not to mention the crate engines that keep getting astonishingly large. No one should be impressed that Harley-Davidson made a 135 cubic inch crate engine. That is 2,212 cc's. And they proudly claim and advertised 130 horsepower. It's just ridiculous. I don't even know if these big crate engines cater to anyone other than like a half a dozen performance Harley builders. And we all know Harley-Davidson is the antithesis to modern motorcycling. They're incredibly expensive, provide very poor value for money, and the Milwaukee 8 engine platform might be the most modern Harley-Davidson engine, but it is not actually modern in any stretch of the imagination. If anything, these Harley-Davidsons are postmodern, requiring such finesse and engineering to continuously manufacture and engineer motorcycles without ever advancing forward. It's like an abstraction of the idea of innovation. Since we're on the topic of not innovating, why do Urals still exist? And more importantly, Why are there Ural fans? For those who are privileged enough to have eluded the Ural for the duration of their riding career, a Ural is a bizarre two-wheel drive sidecar motorcycle contraption. They're for people who like to do military cosplay and want to come near catastrophe anytime they go faster than 55 miles an hour. It is quite the adrenaline rush to ride. We test rode one a few years back. It's pretty nuts. Power goes both to the rear wheels, but there's only one front wheel on the motorcycle, and it's off to the side, so unlike a normal trike, the Ural is constantly fighting with itself to go in the direction in which you're trying to steer if you're using two-wheel drive. It's a bizarre novelty and should really not be classified as a motorcycle in my opinion. It's more like a leftover prop from an Indiana Jones movie. Also, for being branded as a rugged all-terrain vehicle, they're infamously rickety and unreliable. I imagine the dealers are only able to stay in business because they sell a couple Urals a year and then keep having them come back for engine replacements every 6 months. A Ural makes a KTM look like they have Honda reliability, and good luck ever finding parts for it if you ever want to do any work yourself, as I suspect the Russian supply chain is a little backed up right now. I understand true motorcycle sidecars have their own storied legacy in sanctioned racing events, but I wouldn't honestly go as far to say as not just Urals, but sidecars in general are a little overrated. Ducati makes race bikes, and the Multistrada V4 is not a race bike. It's a pseudo-adventure touring bike that costs nearly 30 grand and gets like 33 miles to the gallon. I get it. Ducatis are spicy, and the Multistrada V4 makes 170 horsepower, but having like 140 miles of range on a bike that's meant for touring is kind of insane. It's like all the concessions we make for a Ducati are in consideration to their high-performance machines. Yeah, Panigale is going to be hot, a Street Fighter is going to have tons of wind, but they're the most aggressive performance machines. What do you expect? The Multistrada falls victims to many of the same Ducati-isms that we can dismiss on other models, but on a touring bike, it shouldn't get miserable gas mileage. It shouldn't be torturously hot. The windscreen and fairings should adequately deflect the wind, and the seats should actually be comfortable for all-day riding. And as an aside, I did a review on the Multistrada V4 many years ago, and I called it a refrigerator on wheels, and Ducati has never returned my phone calls, so I got nothing to lose here. And this is a premium bike. 30 grand is nothing to scoff at. And you can get a Japanese sport touring for a fraction of the cost. It has far fewer shortcomings. It's kind of hard to make the case for a Multistrada unless you're the most dedicated Ducatista or you're buying it lightly used because you're a sadomasochist. In regards specifically to the Multistrada's adventure-tinged rally trim, you'll pay a little bit more for the spoked wheels and larger gas tank, but it's still really not a motorcycle that's very well tailored for off-road use, even when you just come down to the engine itself. A high-revving V4 is not ideal for maximum low-end grunt that you want on some trails. Also, you can barely make use of 40 horsepower off-road, try 170. And not to mention, it tips the scales on the porkier side of 570 pounds when you take into account the 8 gallons of fuel. Is a Multistrada fun to ride? Kinda. Do I need an adventure touring bike that can shred lap times? Not really. Ducati makes a lot of great bikes that I really love, but the touring is truly not their strong suit in my opinion, no matter how much adaptive radar cruise control or blind spot monitoring they put on it. And the last overrated motorcycle we must talk about today is, drumroll please, the BMW R1250 GS. Look guys, honest to God, it's overpriced. It's a boutique adventure bike sold to aging Gen Xers who have never been on a proper adventure in their life. It's a touring bike that a handful of incredibly talented and tenacious riders have managed to survive off-road riding with, but GS owners will shout into their computer screens until they're red in the face proclaiming that the GS is the best motorcycle ever made. But they're just BMW simps. They're really not fast, they're super heavy, they got a dumb boxer engine that should have gone extinct 40 years ago. People are like, they're so nice to ride. Well, yeah, if you spend an extra $10K over MSRP on factory options, any motorcycle is going to be pretty nice to ride, so that isn't a huge selling point. Half the time, GS owners would literally be better off riding a Goldwing, but no, because Goldwings aren't cool. Well, newsflash, BMW GSs aren't really that cool either. At least Goldwing guys aren't lying to themselves, and honestly, they're kind of the chads of our community. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. Sorry I was a little spicy today. I'll give you a little pat on the head here. Which bikes do you think are overrated? There are plenty to choose from. Even better, what bike do you think is underrated? The Gixxer 250? Royal Enfield Meteor? Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up video. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoy daily motorcycle content, pumping them out every single day. Let's give a little clap to the Yammy Noob team. We're doing great. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you later. Fact: being bored is actually a high arousal state physiologically. Goodbye. Well, boys, that's the end of this video. But you know what's really cool? Our members over on yamanoob.co are the reason that we can keep this show going. I have a ton of fun doing this, and without those members, it would simply be impossible. So as a way of giving back, I give away these awesome motorcycles. This is an MT09 SP that's up for grabs right now on yamanoob.co. So join as a member, click that link down below on yamanoob.co. But while you're doing that, click this link right over here and keep watching some more videos. Learn more about motorcycling, have some fun with me, watch some cool memes, and maybe I will also elucidate you to some of the finest cultural touchstones in motorcycling.